Well, it's pretty much the end of another dirt track season, and we needed to blow off some steam. Luke and I do a lot of different things during the year, a lot of different obligations and places we have to go, places we have to be, which is totally cool, and we enjoy all of them. But every once in a while, we just want to go somewhere that we want to go and do something that we want to do, and this was the trip to be able to do that.
So believe it or not, there's actually a legitimate sand dune in reasonable driving distance from where we live in Ontario, Canada. And AJ and I love riding ATVs and side-by-sides in the sand. We don't get to do it very often, but we really enjoy doing it. So we thought, you know what? We got some vehicles that fit really well with riding in the sand, and this sand dune is in driving distance. Let's just take a break and go on a road trip and check it out.
So the vehicles we took on this trip were a Polaris RZR 1000S, brand new vehicle, and the Polaris RZR Turbo. We wanted to go to the dunes, we wanted to ride fast, we wanted to not be held back by the horsepower limiting sand that we were going to be riding in. So we took the two biggest rigs that we had kicking around. I mean, that was just plain and simple. We know the Polarises ride good, they jump good, they've got good power, and the new Turbo, I mean, it's insane. So why wouldn't we take these? So when you first show up at the dunes, everybody wants to hold it wide open and just go crazy, because that's what you do when you're in the dunes and you just got there. And that's precisely what we did.
We managed to find a few tight berms, kind of smaller areas where there was some blown in crevices in the sand. And then we also, of course, found the great big, huge, dune walls that everybody thinks of when you say sand dune. It's really fun to just hold the vehicles wide open, climb these big sand walls and bank off the top and throw sand up over the top, or just transition between different obstacles back and forth kind of in a flowy motion. It's something you can't do anywhere but in a sand dune, and it's something that once you do it, you're going to want to go back and do it again.
So when we first started off, I was in the XP Turbo. I mean, that thing is absolutely insane with that horsepower. And even in the sand, without paddles, just with the stock tires on it, it still felt great. Driving into these like 6, 8, 10, 12 foot tall sand walls and just blowing them up with the rear tires and railing through. That vehicle is so stable. The suspension is amazing. The power steering is just right where you want it. But the cool part in sand is that at that point where you think I could use just a little bit more power, you've got a whole lot on tap.
After we kind of traversed the dunes and got a feel for the area that we were in, we switched vehicles. AJ and I had agreed that we would switch up throughout the course of the day so we could both develop honest and realistic opinions of both vehicles. And after we switched, we managed to find these cool kind of snaky paths through some trees with big sand berms. It was a unique spot. I've never seen anything like that in a sand dune area before.
In this tight twisty stuff, the 1000S, honestly, I actually think it handled better than the 1000 Turbo. It was so easy to flick around corners, so easy to rail.
And it was awesome to play follow the leader, chasing each other in these tight kind of bermed corners. And again, this was a perfect example, a perfect spot to ride the S. Of course, I switched with AJ so he could have the S, and he looked like a hero there.
And we could find these cool little tree wells, which I can only compare to being on a snowmobile in the wintertime when you find a tree well at high altitude with deep powder. It had been literally just railed out around this tree, and it dropped down probably 3 feet. And so I jumped in there, and I'm doing these cool berm hooks and just railing around and around and around. It was kind of silly, but I thought it was fun. And then all of a sudden, I'm just like washing the rear end out and getting these huge epic power slides. And before you know it, I ended up going a little overboard, got a little too sideways, and literally the vehicle just kind of tipped on its side.
After a couple hours of just ripping around in the sand, literally just ripping around it wide open in the sand, we decided it was time for a snack break.
If you ever find yourself on the trail, in the dunes, or anywhere that the Dirt Tracks crew is around and it's lunchtime, you are going to be significantly disappointed, because camera lunches are usually beef jerky, Nature Valley granola bars, and bottles of water, and there's always licorice and nibs.
It feels awkward. It feels very intensely sort of don't know, you're in my space.
So we found a little spot inside the trees and shut her down for a few minutes.
It's like a social moment, okay?
But you know, at the end of the day, AJ and I, we're Lesters, and more than that, we're brothers. So Lesters like to jump stuff and brothers like to compete. So we both decided the next step of this journey had to be finding some place to launch these things as big as possible.
We always go out and search for smart jumps in areas that make sense, and every once in a while you don't have the perfect lip, you don't have the perfect setup, there's not the perfect downslope, and you might need to go shape something up. We didn't have any shovels, we didn't have anything to use as a shovel, so you turn a 27 and 28 inch rear tire into a shovel. So we kind of got this jump shaped up, and Luke was hitting it, then I was hitting it, then Luke was hitting it, then I was hitting it. Then we realized the 1000S, maybe not the right vehicle to be doing this with. It works great, but we were starting to go bigger and bigger.
There's no question when you're jumping side by sides, there's no replacement for travel. Especially when you're trying to go as big as possible and you're trying to push the limits of how far you can jump. And that became very obvious to AJ and I very quickly while we were jumping the RZR S1000 and the XP Turbo.
Oh, he made the downside.
You know, the Turbo has got like 18 inches of suspension travel, enormous shocks with excellent anti-bottoming characteristics. It has a full trailing arm rear suspension. It's designed to hit big jumps at high speeds. That's what it's built for.
We started marking out our distances, like, oh, hey, you jump to here. So then, you know, Luke jumps in and he goes and hits it, and he's like, okay, well, I mark his landing, and, you know, it was like 5 feet past mine, and it became a bit of a competition pretty quick. And I think I sealed the deal on the competition at the end, and went a little further overall. That was cool, but it was definitely the limitations if we weren't going to turn the preload up on those shocks.
89 feet. That's a pretty straight line. Now that depends on whether my foot, you know what, I bet my foot's at least 12 inches long.
AJ and I just have a lot of fun following each other around because we both know each other's driving abilities and driving styles to the point where I can follow AJ right on his bumper and I know exactly what he's going to do, and he can follow me right on my bumper and he knows what I'm going to do. So we can ride together faster than most people can ride alone.
One of the unique things about this area, besides the fact that it's a whole bunch of sand in the midst of an area that doesn't have any sand, is that it has nice hard-packed flat surfaces down in the center of the, I guess it would be the separation between the small dunes and the big dunes. And there's a bunch of water down there. So I looked at the water and I thought, hey, if I can get a real high-speed run up to this, maybe I can skip one of these things. So I'm in the 1000S, not the Turbo, and I went at a couple of puddles, and I think we actually got the thing to skip. It was kind of cool. It was pretty unique. They look like they're really, really shallow puddles, but they actually dropped down a couple of feet. So that was fun. We had fun doing that.
At one point during our sort of free-for-all time out there, I found this long stretch of deep whoops in the sand, and they were probably 1.5 feet deep, and that's what a turbo's for. At the time I was driving the Turbo, and that's what the 18 inches of travel of that vehicle are really good for. It's meant to be a high-speed desert running kind of vehicle, and that's where whoops form. So I thought we'd do a couple passes and just see the difference between the S and the XP in that environment. And after one pass, AJ said the XP does this and the S can't.
I went into it at about 65 miles an hour, and I was on the brakes pretty quick because it started swapping the rear end and it just wasn't as confident. After that, I went over and found this smaller whoop section that wasn't the hard-packed really deep, super rutted whoops. It was smaller, sandier whoops, but they were still really giving the suspension a good workout, and that's where the 1000S shines. So as Luke and I are ripping around on the side of this one hill through all these trees, I noticed off to the one side there's this lake, which is next to one of the Great Lakes. So that's unique in itself. But another unique thing is that this lake, which you would think would only be maybe inches deep, has a mid-sized pickup truck stuck with like water in the rear doors of the truck.
So we thought, the good Samaritans that we are, we would use our Polaris razors to help pull out his pickup truck, and sure enough, we, after a few tries and broken toe straps, got him out. He was very thankful, and we went on our way. Riding in the dunes is exciting. It's entertaining. It really engrosses you in what you're doing, and you get really kind of immersed in it. But it's also something that kind of just mellows you out while you're doing it too, because you can drive so fast and there's just so much flow going on back and forth up and down the sides of the dunes. It's really kind of a surreal experience when you're out there and you're in the middle of an area like that.
While it's still work, I mean, it's a lot of play. And that was what this trip was to us. It was being able to get out and just kind of say, all right, we're here for a story, but this is a fun story. This is one where there's, you know, it's just go out, shred it, tear it up, you know, ride these vehicles, ride the wheels off of them, see what they can do, enjoy this unique spot, and have fun as brothers, as business partners, you know, as dirt tracks guys.
If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to Dirt Tracks TV's YouTube channel so you never miss another update.